In this tutorial, I'm going to cover how to work with gradient mesh. And so basically what this tutorial will cover is how to create this pear. And this is all gradient mesh here. We'll take a peek at Command-Y. Okay. So anyway, first of all, I will have 3 pear files uploaded so that you can choose which pear you would like to do. I chose to do this one. This one's got a lot more detail as far as the shape and the stem and the details inside, so it's a little bit more complex, and it will take me a little while to make here. But what we're going to do is we'll start off, and what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to make a new print size document, and then you're going to need to go and place the pear you wish to do. Now, I have a few different pears here, and this is the one I created, so I'm going to choose this one. Before we click, place it as a template, okay? And if you forget to place it as a template, remember, you can always change your layer into a template by double-clicking and checking template, okay? But if you do that, you're going to need to create a new layer, all right? So first thing we're going to do is, after we do that, I'm going to discuss the wrong way to build it, or the harder way, I should say. It looks easy in the beginning, and let's go back over to this right here for a second. When I first became acquainted with gradient mesh, I was basically drawing out all my shapes with the pen tool and then applying the gradient mesh through going to Object, Create Gradient Mesh. And you want to put in a certain amount of rows and columns. Let's say we put in 4 and 4 here so you can see what it looks like. This method worked quite well up until I started running into some difficulty. And I realized that I had less control over this method, and it came about through working with a student. Now let me cancel out of that, and I'll show you this shape, what this shape right here would look like with gradient mesh on it. So we'll go Object, Create Gradient Mesh. And one of the things you can see right there is, and we'll do 2, let's do 3 and 2 and just see what that looks like. Okay. And we'll zoom in here. If you look at this, it's a little hard to see because of the color of that layer. We'll change that layer to a different color here. Okay. So these points are all, well, first of all, the mesh is all twisted up, okay? And so I realized that this was not the best way to always use to create gradient mesh. And then finally I had a student who was trying to make stalactites and stalagmites for a project, and every which way we drew it with the pen tool, the mesh went the wrong direction and was impossible to control, until finally I thought to myself, why don't I just use a rectangle and apply gradient mesh and then build it from there? And that's what we're going to do here, okay? So now you can use the pen tool and draw out your shape, but you won't have as great control of where these points are, okay? So that's why I'm going to show you this way of doing it, because you're going to have greater control with doing it. You can also apply mesh to a rectangle. I mean, a circle. Right now, we're going to apply to a rectangle. And before we go too far here, let me make one more layer. And we're going to place the same image in again, but not as a template this time. We're going to place it and I don't link it because I like to keep it in there because it will embed it in the document. I don't have to worry about dragging the file with me. But anyway, we bring this over here, and we put it off to the side, this image, so that we can choose color off of it later, all right? That's what we're going to need that for. In fact, we can start right now. And because I was reading online, someone had this method it's the same method, but he called it the white rectangle method. Well, the thing is, if your rectangle is not white, then it's not the white rectangle method. So anyway, I just call it the rectangle method, if there is a proper name for this method. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object and Create Gradient Mesh on this shape. And we don't want too many rows and columns, okay? And in fact, it's probably best to kind of limit this in the beginning. I'm going to do 2 and 2. And the reason why is we are going to have to drag these anchor points and control the handles. And the more points there are, the more points you're going to have to move around and more handles you got to move around. So in the beginning, when we do this, we're going to just, we'll just do 2 and 2. And then I'm going to go to what's called outline mode. I'm going to hold down my command key and click on this eye in my layers palette here. Okay? And therefore, we can see the template underneath. Now, what I want to do is I want to start to move these points and define the shape. And the most important thing to think about is what's the bigger shape overall? You got to think of it. I like to think of this in terms of like sculpting, because you start with the big mass areas and then you kind of chisel this down or whittle it down to its form. And so, I'm going to take this anchor point here and drag it up in here. And now I'm going to have to take the handles and curve them. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go and try to get this little thing right here, this curve going this way yet, until I put some more mesh points in here. So we are going to add mesh points as we go along, but only when we need them, okay? So first thing we're trying to do is trying to get the shape of this pear. And it just takes a little while. Now, if you can't see the lines, if you can't see your vector lines, you can always change the color, and we'll change this to maybe dark blue to see if this will help us here to see that. Okay. Now, I'm not going to worry about this curvature going out too much. I mean, I will do like this to help out, but we're going to perfect this shape in just a moment. Now, up at the top here, we're going to need some points in the middle of this eventually. So this is what makes it very complicated and very hard to understand, is I'm going to have to move these points in really close here. And I'm going to have to, the one thing you don't want to do with your mesh is you don't want to cross your handles, okay? And right now my handles are crossing and they're tangled up. So I'm going to tuck this one in right here as best I can, and then tuck this one in more, okay? And then I'm going to move this down just a little bit and try. Now, the reason why I have this corner of my rectangle up so far here is because when I was doing this earlier, I had it down a little further more, and then I had a bunch of points, and I had to move them all up. So this time when I'm doing this, I'm trying to think about where I need these points to be. Now, you see how tangled up that is? Now we're going to have to go and untangle it, and we'll bring this handle in, and then we'll bring this handle in to untangle it. So we're going to tuck these handles in much closer, and then I'm going to move this in a little bit more. And if we need to, we can zoom in to help with creating the top of this here. And let's see here, we'll get that right. Now, we'll worry more about this being perfect here in just a moment, because see, we got a point that comes out here. I mean, it curves in here, comes out, and then curves back. We will perfect that as we go along, as we add more points. So let me just pull this one up here and curve it a little bit better, okay? Now, let me zoom out here for just a moment. And we're going to have to add in more points. And now how we add points in is when we first created this, we had to go to Object and create gradient mesh. It's not showing up anymore, because once you turn an object, or a shape that is, into gradient mesh, there's no taking it off, okay? Let's see if it doesn't even appear in the appearance palette, okay? There's no reversing it, and you can't apply it anymore. But there is a mesh tool over here, and the keyboard shortcut is U. And basically, if you did click on a shape with this mesh tool, it would turn your shape into a mesh shape. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to add a row going this way. And when I'm in outline mode, I can't add it out here. If I'm in preview mode, by the way, I can. All right? But when I'm in outline mode, it won't let me. And right now I'm trying to get the shape of it. So you have to be on a column in order to add one. Now, since I've added that row in, now I can tuck this in a little closer here. Okay? And when we do this, we just want to perfect the shape. Now we're going to need another one coming across here to get that curvature better. But right now, we'll not worry about that. What I try to do is I try to get the shape as close as I can with the anchor points and the handles I have, okay? And then I come in here, I'll worry more about how to perfect it. I just don't want doing anything too weird, getting too kinky, and meaning that, it's like these areas, sometimes you'll get a line and it will kink up on itself. You got to make sure that you don't get any kinks. Like, and what I mean by that, I mean like something like this where there's a kink in it. We can do that later, but in the beginning here, it's best to avoid it. Now let me get my mesh tool again. Sorry, I was just thinking here, and I'm gonna put in a point right here so that I can get this point coming down here, and I can get that curve. All right. Now I learned a long time ago to try to work on the larger shape as a whole, and not to fixate on the little minuscule bumps and curves on a shape, because it takes longer when you got more points to pull all these around. So I'm trying to add more points in as I need them. Okay, that looks a lot better there. Okay, and we might need, and so we can kind of pull this out just a little bit more perhaps, and get this curve just a little bit better. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we can add to the point. Oops, I just added a point by accident. By the way, your mesh tool will pull your points and handles around. So far, I've been using the direct selection tool. In the direct selection tool, you can't accidentally add any points. That's why I like to use it when I'm working with the mesh tool, because as you see, if you're using the mesh tool to move your points and handles around, you can accidentally end up adding a lot of mesh points, and that makes your job a lot harder when you've got a ton of little mesh points in here. So that's something to think about also. So let me go in here, and I'm going to actually put in another, we'll put a row in going this way. These are called rows going across, and these are columns going down. All right, so I'm going to just put that over here and work on the curvature of that. And we'll work a little bit more on the curvature of this. So I'm trying to get the shape as close as I can. Now, I'm moving this down for a reason later on, because later on I'm going to be needing to have a point in here, and we'll talk more about that later on when we get to that. But I'm going to pull that down like this for the moment, and hope that will work well later on when I'm adding more points in. Because I've used this tool quite a bit in the past, and the more you use it, the more you get used to knowing, where to put your points. What I'm trying to do too is I'm trying to move these points around so that these will be where the dark color goes. Because eventually, what's going to happen here is we're going to put color into the points. Because the way the gradient mesh works is it calculates a gradient between one point and another. Now let me go in here, and I might as well put in another mesh point right here. Now I use U for my keyboard shortcut. I'm going to put a row right here, just so I can kind of fix this a little bit more. We'll pull this around a little bit more. All right, so we've got highlights on this pair, and so the highlights are on this side, and we're going to need those points to help us define the highlights. Okay, I'm going to curve this around here. I'm just trying to get this shape the best I can, even on the inside with these mesh points. I'm trying to perfect these so that I can get a better result when I want to shade this, okay? And I'm just trying to curve everything around a little bit better. Okay, now, I think I could probably begin shading this. There are some things here, if we zoom in up here, that we may want to work on a little bit more. Is this little indent there we could try to add? Yeah, there we go, okay. Got that better. One thing I would advise too is this. We're going to go to preview mode in just 1 second here. It's better to get your shape first before you start worrying about the color. Okay? And we want to get this as good as we can. We're going to add some more mesh points later to try to help out with this. But that's pretty good right there. Now, what I like to do is, once I get my shape, then we're going to go and look at it. We'll hold down the Command key, click on the eye and the icon, so we do this. I'm going to click off of everything for a moment. We'll even turn off my template underneath. And the reason why I do this is to make sure that I don't have any hard corners or corners that kind of look a little unnatural. Like we might need to pull this out just a little bit so this curves naturally into that. It doesn't stick out there as this little corner. All right. All right, there we go. And we want to just take a look up here for just a second. Okay, everything looks good. This pear has a lot of shape to it. There's a lot of little bumps in it, okay? It's a harder pear to draw. Now, there is one area right here. Let's go to outline mode here, and let me see if we can perfect this. We might as well add these mesh points in right now, and then we'll do U, and then we'll add a point there, and then we can pull that out, okay? Now, let me zoom out one more time here. And I'm going to start selecting points. Right now, everything is this color, so we don't have any variation in value or tone. And so we're going to go in there, and we're going to select. Now, I like to use my direct selection tool, like I said, because the mesh tool, sometimes you may click, and you may click a little bit off of it and add another point. The other thing, too, is we can use our lasso tool, which comes in very handy, but when I'm doing this, I like to look around and think about what points do I need to be clicking on to get the shading in. And so I'm going to select these points right now, and then go Command Y, and then we'll come over to my pear over here, and then we'll click a darker green. And we can try to change that to, that's not bad. That's not bad. This color right here is a little too light, so we can actually pick a color over here. There we go. Okay, maybe like that. And so now you see how it works here, because what it's doing is it's calculating a gradient between this point and this point and this point and this point. And so there's a lot of things that work here, and that's why it's so important to know where to put these mesh points at. Let me go in here again. We'll go to outline mode, because the reason why I go to outline mode is to see where my shading's at. And so these points right here are the highlights, okay? And we might want to drag this down, because one of the things to understand is that in the beginning when I started using the mesh tool, I'll just pull this down here so we have a nicer, so that won't be kind of a weird lumpy gradient in there, so it will actually go through there a little bit better. But one of the things I learned was that I thought in the beginning that the points should be on the edge of the shading, but really the point should be in the middle. So if we want a dark area here, we wouldn't put the mesh point over here. We need to put it inside the darker area. Same thing with these highlights. If we want these highlights here, we need to have these points in the middle of the highlights and not on the edges. And so let me go in here, and we'll hold down the Command key again, and we'll just go over here and click on this lighter color there, and we begin to get a highlight, okay? It's not bad. All right. We'll zoom out here and see if there's anything else I can work on to make it better. We can go in and do individual color areas, like maybe this. We can go over there, and then we can come over here and try to get another type of green in there, okay? And come over here, maybe get this more yellowish here. The other thing, too, with the mesh is the handles. Now, one of the things you don't want to do is get your handles all tangled up. And I say that because the handles control how far the color stretches. So if I take this handle and move it over further, the color is going to stretch more over there. But if I take this other handle and do this and cross it, then we're going to eventually get something like this, okay? Which may be helpful if we're trying to get this kind of shading. But if we're not, if we're trying to get nice and smooth shading, we don't want our handles to cross, okay? So there might be an opportunity where you might need to cross handles, But you try to keep everything as smooth as possible. I'm going to zoom out a little bit more here. And I'm not going to worry too much about specifics because we can go in here and add more shading later. I'm picking these up, and then I'm going to go over here and pick up some lighter or different color green there. Ooh, I like that. All right, now let me pick up this right here, and we'll pick this color there. See, I can go in there and pick individual anchor points. Now this, I want to curve out a little bit more. There we go. And I'll just drag my palette over here, my swatches palette, which I don't even need. So I'm going to close my swatches palette. I won't need that at all for this. But anyway, and we'll bring our layers down here for a moment so I can get to this. I'm going to be selecting these up here. And even the points on the outside control color. Okay? So now this starts to look pretty decent. And the next thing I'm going to need to do is make the stem. And that color might be, it's pretty bright there. I don't know. Well, later on when I add more shading in there, it'll be very important. Now on the edge here, what I'm thinking of doing is, let me come in here and get the edge shapes. We'll get these and these points. That is, I call it edge shapes. It's the anchor points on the edge I'm getting, and just these right here because I want these to be very dark. I'll pick a color right down there, and if that's too dark, we can always do that. You can also, so I'm using the eyedropper to sample color with. So you can sample color once you've got color in your object. You can sample it off the object itself rather than coming over here. So if I wanted a darker color but not quite that dark, I can just click in between these areas and it will pick a slightly lighter color. Okay? And this doesn't look too bad. Let me try to control this just a little bit because notice how this kind of actually curves up a little bit even though there's a little bump in there. Don't worry about texture because texture we can't control with gradient mesh. If we do have to do texture for something, we would have to draw texture shapes or something like this. We could probably get the basic overall shading. Then we'll zoom out to take a look at it. Now we're going to get in here in a moment and start shading up there. But first, what I want to do is I want to do the stem, and then we'll lock it, and then we'll work on the pear again. Okay? So right now, let me go back to outline mode. Now to draw this stem, I'm going to need a long rectangle, something like this, okay? And we could change its color later on. I'm on the wrong layer here. This is my image layer. Okay, I'll lock that image layer for a moment. I might need to unlock it to move it later. But what I'm going to do is we're going to go up to Object again. We'll zoom in before I go up there. Okay? We're going to go to Object. We're going to go Create Gradient Mesh. And, you know, like I said before, you don't want too many rows and columns when you're first putting the mesh onto a rectangle. You can put a mesh onto an ellipse too, if working with ellipse would be a little faster. But in this case, we definitely need a rectangle. Anyway, the more points there is, the more points we have to pull around. So I would prefer to have this something like probably one row. So when this is called one row, right? This and two columns. Okay. Actually, you know what? Let's go the opposite way. This is really what I want. I want two there and one here. Okay. And the reason why is because these are the points I'm going to use to move everything around. So once I do that, I'll click OK. Now we can actually you can resize a mesh object using your main selection tool here with the bounding box, which I'm just doing. And then I'm going to rotate this a little bit here. And I'm just going to move it into place there. Let's rotate a little bit more there. I'm trying to get towards the middle, okay? So that these points in the middle here will correspond like that. Now, let me go up here. Might as well do this first. And I'm going to pull that point there and this corner point here. All right, and then I'm going to have to move my handle around here. We'll have to put in a mesh point there, of course, to get that better. But before we go and do that, we're going to try just to get the basic shape. Now, we don't have to get it perfect, okay? It's not. We don't have to do that because we're going to be adding more points once as we need them, okay? So I'm just trying to get the basic form of this shape. And let me come up here, pull this over here. Yeah, this stem is quite the shape here. It does a lot of curving. It's really complicated. And let's see here. We'll add that up there. Okay, now once I get it, I was going to say something there, but I get distracted when I'm working because I'm looking at something. I start thinking about what should I do next. All right, now I want to add a point now. So I'll go to U, which is my keyboard shortcut for gradient mesh, and I'll click on the edge here. So it will add a column, that is. You'll add a column going in there. Actually, it's two columns now because it splits them. It obviously does not consider the line a column. It considers the space in between a column. Okay, same with a row. But anyway, I kind of think of these as this to me is the column, and this line is the row. Okay, that's how I think of it. But anyway, I need now to work on this area right here. So I'm going to add another mesh point along here. And if you need to, just zoom in so it makes it easier on you so you can see things. Okay, I'm going to tuck that in. We don't want these handles to cross. I'm going to tuck that in like this. Move that there. Move this here. Okay. And see, I'm getting more and more of this shape as we're adding more and more points. Okay, so just gotta be patient. Like I said, I think of this like sculpting. I mean, or maybe you could think of it kind of like silly putty. You know, you're pulling it around to make this shape. But for me, it's more like sculpting. Okay. So anyway, I'm gonna get in the mesh tool again. U. Now add another column and drag this up here. Okay. Now that doesn't look bad. It looks good right there so far. Now this will allow me to move this down a little bit and maybe just curve this out a little bit here. All right, so it gets more and more of that contour correct. And let's see here. We'll pull this out just a little bit and adjust this. All right, so right now I've got pretty much the shape I want. So let's zoom out for a second. And okay, before I go to start adding more mesh points in, we should pick out a kind of a middle value or whatever the dominant color is over here. I usually like to work towards, the middle on out. So I'm going to pick a brownish color that's not too dark and not too light. And then I can add in points later. Now, if this was majority dark, I would say we could pick mostly a darker color and then add in. But there's a lot of value changes in here. So that's why I kind of picked this color first. So let me zoom in here. Let's go back to outline mode. Now this one gets really hard here is putting in all these points. And like I said, first we want to get the shape down. Then we want to start adding these points. So this actually kind of has this kind of ridges. So it's got, these lines that are white and these lines that are dark. And what I'm trying to do is I want to situate this so that I can put in a lighter, actually we're going to put in another, go to U, I'm going to put in another mesh point. We'll put it along here so it adds in a row. And so these rows, I'm going to pull this over a little bit more. We'll zoom in so I can discuss what we need to do here. So this color right here is going to be a darker brown. This is almost going to be a light. This is going to be the mid-tone brown. And so I'm going to first put this mid-tone in here, and then I can put in this other color. And before we do anything, we should probably do some more moving here, because this gets, the more of these points there are, the harder it is to move them all. So that's why it's like I have to look ahead. I have to look around to see where do I need these points at, this line at. All right, I'm going to go in here, do U again, and add a mesh point right here on this. So that's going to be a lighter color. That's going to be the color it is. We'll add this for darker, this for lighter, okay? And let's start shading this. All right, so I can see from the template, and so I'm going to use my direct selection tool. I use a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to pick out these areas that should be darker. And part of it's down the edges here, although there's a lighter color in there. Overall, this area is pretty dark. Okay. We're going to need some points in here to stop that from going all the way up. But so what I might do is I'm going to go back here and deselect those. I'm going to add in a row right here. And actually, I'll add it down a little bit further down here. Okay. Try to get where I want it to be. Because remember, this is the lighter color. It's going to stretch up until this point here. So the reason why I'm putting these others in here is so that this will do a better job at shading this. So again, I'm going to go back to my direct selection tool, start selecting the points where I think it should be the darkest. And by having these other points and these other rows in here, it's going to prevent the dark color from stretching too far up. All right, so that's why I'm waiting to put in my dark color until I get a certain amount of points in there. Okay, now let's go to outline mode. Hold down my command key, click on this eye, let's zoom out, and let's go over here and pick a darker color off that stem, and so we begin to get something like this. Now remember, there is some darker color that needs to be in between here, or in between this and this. So then, right here, this needs to be a little darker. Okay, so we're going to pick up these points here. If I get a question mark, that's because there's in my fill color here. That is because I've got multiple points that have different colors in them. And so I'm going to go in and I'm going to click in between the dark and the light so we get something more like that, perhaps. All right. There we go. That's much better. Okay. Now, as far as coloring, the other thing to consider too is in gradient mesh we don't use the stroke palette at all. We don't even really use. We use the fill, and most of the time I'm just using the eyedropper to pick off color from either the shape itself where it has color already, or I'm using an image. So now let me go in here. And we've got a lighter color here, and a lighter color here, and a lighter color there. Okay? And so I pick those, and then what I'm going to do is Command Y. I can't see anything this far out, but I'm going to go in here and get this lightest color, this pinkish color here. And we'll zoom back in here to see what it's done here. So see what it does. I actually had to predict out how to kind of get those ridges. That's why I needed all those rows and columns, is because of just all of this, okay? And so you can't get everything with using one mesh shape, because sometimes you might have to build other shapes on top that you can shade. But anyway, I try to get as much as I can. I'm going to pick up these points right here and make them lighter, all right? So let's go back here. We're going to make these fairly light. And they're on the edge. They're not going to stretch too far. We can get that lighter color there, which is unusual. And then if we need that color to stretch out more, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch my handle out. So I'm going to take this handle and move it further over and move this one in here a little bit better, okay? So we get more of that. Now let's see what we got. Okay, it looking better, much better. I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, this area could be a little darker here, and there is a value difference and a color difference between here and here. So I'm going to add another row in here. The row we're looking at is actually on the pear, and if you need to, you may need to lock an object so that you don't accidentally click on it. But I want this to be maybe, I'll put this one here. I'm going to put another one here. All right, now, let me get in here closer. And I'm going to pull this over here a little bit. And pull this one out over here. And I don't want to go on the line. So I want my, because having meaning on the edge of that darker shape here. But we'll try this to see what it looks like. All right, so let me zoom out. We've got those 2 points selected. We could just do Command Y. And see, it's already put color in there. I'm going to come over here and get this greenish color in this stem and see what it will look like here. Much better. Now, there is another color in there, and that's because I added a mesh point, and whatever color you were using last is the color it will use. So I'm just going to change that color like that. All right. So this starts to look a lot better. I should use this lighter color over here. We'll zoom out a little bit. And it's good to zoom out to see what, because sometimes it's just got an object or a shape may have too much detail, and you got to kind of, we're kind of painting with mesh, and we're trying to get the overall look and feel of a stem here. So it gets a little darker in here where it's lighter. Right there, we want this area darker. Let me zoom in here, and I'm thinking of using this lasso tool. And I'm going to lasso around some of these points here. And then I'm going to go to my eyedropper, and then click that so we can get a darker color. Now, if it's too dark, let's pick in between there. All right, maybe something like that. And let me zoom out here and take a look. See how that compared. Not bad, not bad. Obviously, we need some of this darker color up in here. So maybe these points we'll take, and we'll pick not the color in there, but in between. Okay, maybe something more like that. Yeah, that's not bad. It's not gonna be. Remember, this is pretty small when you zoom out, so I'm just trying to get some transitions going on here. Whoa. Okay, something like I like that. We'll zoom out. And you can see this starts to look more and more like the stem. If this is too light, we can always pick a color in between there. Oh, maybe that wasn't right. Yeah, there we go. That looks much better. And then let me go to outline mode. Sometimes I prefer to do that, just look and see these shapes here. So let me do my lasso again. Okay. I don't use my lasso much, but it really does help if you need multiple points selected. And we'll select that too. Oops, it didn't. You can hold down your shift key and lasso another point if you have to. Okay. Now let's go to hold down my command key, click on this eye, and then let me get my eyedropper, and we'll pick up this color here. Okay. Now there is something, like I said, you can't get everything exactly, but you can get a lot. So I'm just taking a peek here. So this point right here is light. It's not exactly right where it needs to be, so I'm going to tuck it in over there, and then I'm going to get my mesh tool and add another point right here, and then go back to preview mode, and then we're going to click a darker color there. There we go. Okay, that's better. And then down in here, we can add a point about right here. I'm going to add a point here, which makes it a row, and this is to stop the color. This point right here is going to be used to stop this color from stretching so far, okay? So Now let me go back in here, and I think this is supposed to be lighter. Yeah, that's going to be lighter, so we can just click this point right here, that color. If we need to, we can add another point, or we can pull this on up here and tuck this handle in a little bit more. There we go. So you can get a lot of different definition with this. I'm about at a stopping point for this because I want to go back and work on the stem some more. And I'm going to choose the edge here, with that lasso. And I'm going to pick a darker color there like that. And then I notice, let me zoom all the way over here for a second. Yeah, there's this weird kind of, I don't know, it's grayish light, but we could try to mimic that. Put in a point. So, and one of the other reasons I like to go to outline mode is because sometimes I want to add, because if you click in between, you add a row and a column. If you click on a column, you add a row. If you click on a row, you add a column. And in this case, I don't want to add a row and a column. I just want to add, another row in. And so that's why I wanted to see that there to see where I could put that. And now this color needs to be kind of a lighter color like that. And we'll zoom out here and get this better here. We're going to use my lasso tool again. I don't even use it that much. Q is the keyboard shortcut. I should have remembered that. I looked at it earlier because I needed to know the shortcut when I was building it the first time. So let me come over here. We click on this lighter color, and let's take a peek here. It's not bad. Not bad. It may stretch a little far. So we can always pull these down here, these handles. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to tuck these handles in. Instead of adding more and more points, I'm going to just manipulate how far this color stretches up by moving the handle. And in this case, we might even want to try to just cross it just to get that kind of look that's going on over there. That's it. It adds some really sharpness in there. And when we zoom out that, we'll take a peek here just a second, see what that looks like. All right. Let's see here. It's not bad. It's not identical. It's hard to get everything identical, but it's getting a lot closer. And I just want to take another peek here in outline mode to see what we might want to just take some of these points here. And I know some of them are lighter, but we're going to take some of those there and just make them just a little bit darker. There we go. Now let's zoom out. I think I'm more happy with that now. And we can get this point right here a little darker. I'll just lasso around here. And we'll go and pick the darkest color up there. There we go. All right. So that looks pretty good. That's not bad for gradient mesh. I mean, it looks like a painting. It looks like a Photoshop painting. So now that I get my stem more like and I can go in there and keep working on this all I want, but I want to now add this kind of divot, this kind of little crater that this thing's coming out of. And so if we go to outline mode, you can see it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stem and I'm going to lock it because otherwise it's going to be in the way. So I do Command 2, which is lock. Okay, if you don't know that, you can go up here. You can see what lock is. Okay, we'll undo it. So and that's unlock all. This is lock. Yeah, lock selection. Command 2. All right. Now that that's locked, I'm going to get my selection tool for just a moment just to select here. And I'm going to add and get my mesh tool, and I'm going to add a point in here. Now, this is going to take less time than it did the first time I created it because I tucked the corner of that rectangle way in here. And when I first did this, my corner was somewhere around here, so when I added this line in, it curved all the way down in here. So that's why it's good to know where to tuck your corner in at. So this is going to make my job a lot easier. I spent a lot more time coloring this the last time. So now let's take those points. We'll go Command Y, or hold down your Command key, click on that eye. Now zoom out here, and then let's try to see what kind of color we should pick off of this pear over here. Yeah, I could get a little darker, perhaps. Maybe that's too dark. We'll pick this right now. All right. And I've got 2 points selected, so I can always make this point, or we'll take that point and make it even darker. We might even pick that color up right there. We're going to add another mesh line to use U as our keyboard shortcut for that. Add it here so I can actually lighten this part up there. Okay. And then I'm going to add, now I'm going to start adding in, like if we go to outline mode here and take a look, there's a highlight up here. And before I make this a really light highlight color, I am going to put another row going across here. And the reason why is I need a point to stop the highlight from stretching too far. Okay, so because you can do so much with handles, but your points really is where the color is at. So I'm going to click that there, and maybe I'll make sure that we'll click that there. We'll do Command Y, and then we'll go and get this lighter color here. See, that starts to look like that divot. Now let's go over here. All right, this right here, I'm gonna pull this stuff down, and this is where it gets really. That's why I say the less mesh points you have, the better when you're trying to sculpt out a shape. But I am trying to get this point so it doesn't look odd when I put darker color in it. Okay, let me put some. So what I might do here is I'm thinking of pulling this down a little bit more here. And I'm going to put a mesh point in here, or mesh or row here, we'll do U, to stop the color from stretching. And let's go to our, there we go. Okay, now, we don't want it that light, so we can probably change that there. But this color, this point right here contains a color something similar to this. There we go. Now let's zoom out here, and we can see what colors more I need to do here, if I need to do anything more. Not bad at all. So, and we can go and specifically pick certain colors. Like if I want to, I can zoom out here. This is what I hate about having to deal with the coloring sometimes. If it's okay if you have the color in there already. See, I didn't know it was that color that was going to be, it was more closely resembles the stem there. All right, so I'm going to pull this down just a little bit more. I'm going to pull this point down here. There we go. All right, now I could probably add another mesh point somewhere up in here. And the reason why is because I'm trying to get, there's a little bit of color that flares up there. And I need a point to kind of stop it, because I've looked at this enough before. All right, so this point right here, and maybe this point right here, I'm going to make darker. Twist that in there. All right, so let me grab these two, and we want that point in a little closer in like that. Okay, now let me hold down my Shift key, select those 2 points. Oops, something's going on here. I can't get to both of them at once. So we'll lasso Q. All right, click on both. We'll go to preview mode and click on this color, and then that starts to do that. And it's a little closer to what was happening. We could bring this down here. Now, like I said, it doesn't. I mean, this is pretty good. You know, it's not exact, but it's not bad. It's very close, and it looks a lot more like a pear than what you would get with anything else you would use in a vector program. Okay, you know, because you can't do this with 3D Revolve. I'm going to change that color there. And I'm pretty much done. I'm just trying to perfect some little things here. But see, this is what you're going to need to do in order to make a pear, okay? And so there's a lot you can do with gradient mesh. You've got 3 pairs to choose from. Pick one and go about it, and watch this tutorial and pause it when you need to, and it should help you understand how to deal with mesh, okay? So I'm going to end this.